Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more HOA stories. In this video, a homeowner association designated my land as public property and built an HOA pool clubhouse on my land. Let's dive right into the video. So I got a nice 3-bedroom house on a large corner lot in a quiet suburban neighborhood. When I first moved there back in the mid-80s, there was no homeowner association and not many neighbors either, since the area was not very developed yet. I got the entire piece of land fairly cheap and then built the house largely by myself. It was just a nice laid-back community where folks mostly kept to themselves but were friendly enough if you passed them on the street. Well, that all changed many years ago when a group of busybody neighbors decided that we needed an HOA to protect property values and maintain community standards. However, I wanted no part of it from day one. I have always believed that a man's home is his castle, and I didn't need some petty tyrants telling me what color to paint my shutters or how tall my grass could be. When they first formed the HOA, a couple of board members came knocking on my door with their clipboards and fake smiles trying to get me to sign up. No thanks, I told them firmly. I'm not interested in joining. But Mr. Johnson, one of them said in a syrupy sweet voice, don't you want to have a say in how our neighborhood is run and protect your property values? I just shook my head and said, my property values are just fine, ma'am, and I already have a say. It's called voting in local elections and following the existing laws. I don't need another layer of bureaucracy telling me what to do with my own home. They tried a few more times over the next year or so to convince me, but I held firm. Eventually, they seemed to give up and move on to hassling other neighbors. Little did I know that was just the beginning of my troubles with the HOA. At first, it was just petty annoyances. They would leave passive-aggressive notes on my door about my lawn being a quarter-inch too tall or my holiday decorations not conforming and keeping up with the neighborhood aesthetics. I mostly ignored them, but it was irritating. Then they started getting bolder. One summer, I came home to find a couple of HOA board members in my backyard measuring my fence. Excuse me? I said as I approached them. But what exactly do you think you are doing on my property? The HOA president, Karen, yes, her actual name was Karen, turned to me with a look of disdain. We are just confirming that your fence meets HOA guidelines. Section 3, paragraph 2 clearly states that all fences must be no taller than 6 feet. I felt my blood pressure rising. First of all, I'm not a member of your HOA, so your guidelines don't even apply to me. Second, this is my private property and you are trespassing. Get out of my yard now before I call the police. Karen huffed indignantly. Well, I never. We're just trying to maintain standards around here. Your non-compliance is bringing down everyone's property values. My property values are just fine, I shot back. Now get off my lawn before I show you how we dealt with trespassers back in my military days. That seemed to finally get through to them and they scurried away, but I knew this was not over. Over the next few years, the harassment continued and even escalated. They would call the city to report imaginary code violations. They tried to tow my project car that I kept in my driveway, claiming it was an eyesore. One time I even caught some of them trying to paint my mailbox to bring it into compliance while I was at work. Each time I would push back, calling the police for trespassing, filing complaints with the city, sending cease and desist letters. It was exhausting. But I refused to let them bully me into joining their little dictator club. Things finally came to a head last year. I had taken a 6-month contract job overseas, good money, but it meant being away from home for an extended period of time. I had a friend house sitting and checking on the place regularly, but he was not around day to day. About 4 months into my contract, I got a frantic call from my house sitter, Tom. Dave, man, you're not gonna believe this, he said, sounding stressed. I came by to mow the lawn like usual and there's construction going on in your backyard. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean, construction? Tom's voice was incredulous. I mean, there are bulldozers and concrete mixers and a whole crew of guys building something back there on your property. It looks like they're putting in a pool or something. I was stunned silent for a moment, trying to process what he was telling me. Did you talk to anyone? Find out what's going on? Yeah, I tried, Tom replied, but they just said that they had all the proper permits and to take it up with the HOA if I had any questions. Dave, I think the HOA is building some kind of community pool on your property. I felt a wave of rage wash over me. Those idiots had finally gone too far. Tom, I need you to do a few things for me right away, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. First, call the police and report this as trespassing and vandalism. Then take lots of photos and videos of everything. The construction, any paperwork or permits you can see, the workers, just everything. Can you do that for me? Yeah, of course, Tom said. What are you gonna do? I took a deep breath. I'm booking the next flight home. This ends now. The next 24 hours were a blur of frantic travel arrangements, sleepless nights, and barely contained fury. By the time I finally pulled into my driveway, I was running on nothing but caffeine and righteous anger. The scene in my backyard was even worse than I'd imagined. A huge swath of my lawn had been torn up and the framework of what looked like a pool house was already taking shape. Construction equipment and materials were strewn everywhere. I marched up to the first person I saw in a hard hat. "Who's in charge here?" I demanded. The worker looked confused. That would be Mr. Stevens, the foreman. He's over there in the white truck." I stormed over to the truck and rapped on the window. A middle-aged man with a bushy mustache rolled it down. "Can I help you?" "Yeah, you can help me by explaining what the hell do you think you're doing on my property?" I growled. The foreman furrowed his brow. "Your property?" "No, dude, this is HOA common land. We have all the proper permits to build the new community pool here." I felt my face getting hot. I don't know what the HOA told you, but this is absolutely not common or public land. This is my private property that I've owned for over 30 years. You need to stop work immediately and get your equipment off my land. "Look, buddy," the foreman said, clearly annoyed. "I don't know what your problem is, but we have signed contracts and permits. Take it up with the HOA if you have issues. I'm just here to do a job." I realized I was not going to get anywhere with this guy. "Fine, but you'll be hearing from my lawyer very soon. I suggest you wrap things up here quick." I turned and headed for my car, pulling out my phone. I had some calls to make. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal action. I hired the meanest bulldog of a property lawyer I could find, and we immediately filed for an emergency injunction to stop the construction. We also began putting together a massive lawsuit against the HOA for trespassing, property damage, fraud, and a laundry list of other charges. The HOA, of course, tried to claim that my property was actually common public land that had been deeded over to them years ago. But their so-called evidence was flimsy at best and obviously fabricated. They had forged documents, backdated contracts, the works. It was clear that they'd been planning this for a long time, thinking they could get away with it while I was out of the country. The case moved quickly, thanks in large part to the mountain of evidence my house sitter Tom had gathered. The photos and videos clearly showed the HOA members directing the construction on my land. We even had audio of Karen, the HOA president, explicitly stating that they were going to take care of the troublemaker Johnson once and for all. As the legal proceedings unfolded, I learned even more about just how far the HOA had gone in their quest to force me out. They had been spreading lies about me to my neighbors for years, claiming I was running a drug lab or that I was a convicted SEX offender. They had tried multiple times to get the city to condemn my property on false pretenses. The more that came out, the more outraged the judge became. In the end, it was not even close. The HOA's case fell apart completely under scrutiny. The final ruling came down like a hammer. The judge was not only ruling in my favor on all counts, but went even further. The HOA was ordered to pay for all damages to my property and cover the costs of removing the half-built pool house. They were hit with massive punitive damages for their fraud and harassment, and in a particularly satisfying twist, the judge ordered the HOA to be dissolved entirely, ruling that they had acted in bad faith and abused their authority. As we left the courthouse after the final hearing, my lawyer turned to me with a grin. "In all my years of practice, I've never seen an HOA get spanked that hard. You just made history, my friend." I couldn't help but smile. Well, they messed with the wrong Marine. Semper Fi. The aftermath was almost as satisfying as the court victory. Karen and several other HOA board members were charged with multiple felonies for fraud and forgery, and last I heard she was even facing serious prison time. My property, meanwhile, was fully restored at the HOA's expense, and I used some of the settlement money to put in my own pool, positioned perfectly so the former HOA members could see me enjoying it from their windows. However, the best part was the reaction from my neighbors. It turned out a lot of them had actually been suffering under the HOA's petty tyranny for years, but I had been too afraid to speak up. Once the truth came out, I had people coming by for weeks to shake my hand and thank me for standing up to them. One of my neighbors, an older lady named Ruth, even baked me a cake. She came by one afternoon with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "I cannot thank you enough for what you've done. Seriously, those horrible people fined me thousands of dollars over the years for the silliest things. My flower beds, my bird feeders. I was afraid I would lose my home. You're a hero." I was touched by her gratitude, but I just shook my head. "I'm no hero, ma'am. I just believe in standing up to bullies. Nobody has the right to tell you what to do with your own property." These days, the neighborhood is peaceful again, just like when it was when I first moved in all those years ago. People mind their own business for the most part, but there's a new sense of community too. We look out for each other now, but without any heavy-handed rulers or ridiculous fines. As for me, I'm enjoying my retirement in peace, puttering in my garden, working on my project car, and yes, lounging by my new pool. Sometimes I'll catch one of the former HOA busybodies glaring at me from down the street. I just wave and smile. After all, I fought for this country to protect our freedoms, and sometimes that fight starts right in your own backyard. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, to not miss any of my daily uploads. The next one is another super interesting HOA story. It is titled HOA Security Gone Wrong. So our HOA hosts an annual chili cook-off. It's a modest event. We usually get about 20 to 30 chilies and 100 people to enjoy them. For a little bit of background though, we live in a very quiet upper middle class suburban neighborhood. We have a few gated facilities like a tennis court and a pool, and we hire a couple neighborhood teens every summer to check memberships at the gate, but everybody already knows everybody, so it's really just to toss a few bucks and some job experience to the kids. The only crime we have is the occasional speeder who cuts through our neighborhood to get between streets during rush hour. The annual chili cook-off is always held at our tennis court. Instead of the local teen guarding the gate for whatever reason, our HOA insists on hiring a rent-a-cop for this event in particular. There's no rhyme or reason, it's actually one of the smaller annual events that our neighborhood hosts, and none of the other events have security. Anyway, so this clown shows up in a bulletproof vest that has a Punisher patch on it. By the way though, even though that is ridiculous, I love The Punisher. One of my absolute favorite movies, series and even video games. Don't forget the comics as well. Either way, he parks his SUV, which also has a big old Punisher badge, right on the grass and stands in front of the gate holding an AR while he scowls at people walking in. Then he walks around eating chili while he holds his gun in the other hand and stares angrily at the neighborhood folks dishing up chili for themselves. Last year, we started heckling him for being a rent-a-cop bringing a rifle to a gated community chili cook-off, and in a deadpan serious voice he said, "You never know, so you always gotta be prepared." Thanks to our HOA for spending our money on keeping us safe, I guess. If armed assailants ever descend on our chili cook-off, we'll all be protected by one angry old bald guy who thinks he's a comic book mercenary. Seriously, why are we blowing our money on this crap? By the way, to address the damning point that he cannot eat chili while he is holding a gun, it was on a sling. Is that seriously what you picked out from this? And the next one is another HOA story from r/FHOA. It is titled HOA Illegally Cut Our Internet Wire. For context, I live in a house in a gated community with many houses next to each other. Basically, our Spectrum wire that runs from the outside to the box, which is a bit of ways, they cut. I'm not sure if they knew it was an internet wire or what, but they cut it. Apparently, it was an eyesore how it was exposed a tiny bit to the box, which makes no sense because there's other wires there also. Not to mention, it's been there for years. So we called Spectrum and they sent out a guy today to check it out. Here's the kicker though, not only did they have someone cut the long expensive wire, but they also stole it. The Spectrum guy was like, what the hell? They cannot do that, they cannot destroy our property. He also said he could have reconnected it, even cut if they didn't steal it, so it's not even our cable/internet, it is Spectrum's. So now we have to wait until Monday so they can bring in a few guys to put a new wire and the labor to get it from our house to the box. Spectrum is gonna charge the HOA the bill, it just doesn't make sense to me. We had no idea that they were even doing that to our property, no notifications or anything, they just came and did it. I was at work. Only reason we knew was because my dad heard someone on the roof and the wire is cut. And the guy said he was part of the HOA. Isn't that illegal as hell? Beyond just destroying and stealing Spectrum property, they cannot come to our property without notifying us and destroy something. Honestly, if I was home, I would have 100% said, what the F are you doing? Get the F down. If I saw someone on my roof, Spectrum said they'll increase our internet speeds and give us a faster and stronger cable when they come install it on Monday for the inconvenience of waiting 2 more days. But my war is with the HOA right now, because what the hell? F HOAs. Update to the story, the last post I made blew up and was super popular, so if you were one of the people that saw my last post and wanted an update, here it is. So of course it turns out that the HOA indeed cut and admitted to cutting my internet wire. Not surprising, but apparently there was some error somewhere, according to them, where the guy that cut it wasn't supposed to. He was just to inspect and go from there, where we figure out a solution to make it less of an eyesore. Somewhere between them and that person there was a miscommunication. According to them, whether or not that's the truth, who knows. So after being angrily on the phone with them, they quickly apologized when I started bringing up FCC and potentially even filing a police report. They said that any fee from Spectrum they will pay, so we got on a three-way call with Spectrum, and the HOA greenlit for Spectrum to make any necessary repairs and send the bill to them or whatever extra fees that will come from this. Also, I mentioned to the HOA that doesn't make me whole, considering I've been 4 days now without internet. So I asked how are they gonna make me whole from their mistake. They said they'll give me 2 months waived HOA fees as an apology. I agreed, as in the end I want no more problems and I just want my internet back. Furthermore, Spectrum agreed to prorate the days I was missing by not having internet and will increase my speeds. Increasing my speeds just to be nice and because I'm a loyal customer. So I'd say it all worked out in the end. This was my first ever run-in with the HOA, and I'm sure the HOA knew they messed up, because they put me on hold for like 10 minutes. Then came back with an apology and started being extra nice afterwards. So Spectrum is gonna come tomorrow to rewire and make the necessary repairs. It is dumb because all the HOA had to do was talk to me about it and I would have called Spectrum. Even Spectrum said it was an easy fix to where all they had to do was move the wire up out of place and not being noticeable. But instead it turned into all of this. Hopefully after that the situation is done, no more, and we can all just move on. Can't say if this is a trash HOA or not, as it is the first time they've ever messed with my house in any way, but thanks for everyone that gave me advice or was on my side. And the next one is a multi-update Neighbor from Hell story. This one is titled Entitled Neighbor Part 1. I, 31 female, live in a block of 6 units, apartments for non-Australians. A month ago, the unit above mine went up for sale and sold fairly quickly, and the new owner moved in less than a week ago. This morning I got up and went to take the rubbish out and found a note stuck to my door. I honestly thought it was a "I'm new to the building" kind of note, you know? However, I could not have been more wrong. Dear tenant, I recently bought your building and wish to introduce myself. My name, blah blah, not going to put her actual name, and I think you will find me a fair landlord. However, I do have rules. Number 1, everyone is to be in their units by 9 PM. If you're going to be out past this, I suggest you find accommodation elsewhere. Number 2, no pets allowed. If you have any, they must be relocated before I do an inspection, or I will call the ranger to remove them. This is the only warning. Number 3, I will conduct an inspection once a month and you will be present to answer any questions or face eviction. Number 4, failure to pay rent on time will result in your eviction. If we all follow these rules, I'm sure we will get along. Sincerely, Mr. Blah Blah. What the F did I just read? Fun fact about my building, we all own our own units. Nobody actually owns the whole building. I won't lie, I got to the number 2 and had a slight panic attack because I have cats and there is no way I was giving them away before I remembered we bought our unit just before Christmas. We rented it from a friend prior, and when she told me she was thinking about selling it, we bought it. We did not even have to move. So in some ways it still feels like renting, but we actually own our unit. Now, I am not great at confronting someone and I tend to shake a lot, but at that moment I was quite angry, so I went upstairs and knocked on her door. You know that gut feeling you have? It was spot on. That door opened and there stood a Karen, her hair blonder than my own, her nails long and bright colored. She did not look happy to see me there. I introduced myself and explained that I lived downstairs and that I wanted to talk to her about her note. She started to talk over top of me, explaining that her letter was basic rules and even a child could understand it, and if I did not like her rules I could hand in a letter to vacate. Wow. I would ask if people are really this up themselves, but I work in retail and could answer my own question. I told her that I actually own my unit. She had not bought it or the rest of the building, but only her own unit, and that she couldn't enforce anything in her note. She did not like that at all. She started yelling at me, saying that yes, she had indeed bought the whole building and that failure to comply with her rules would mean I would be evicted. I was just starting to think maybe I was wrong when another neighbor opened his door. He came out and asked what the issue was about and could she stop screaming, as he worked nights and was trying to sleep. I told him I was trying to explain that she had not bought the building, and she started yelling again. My neighbor told her to stop and then said the best thing I had heard that day. "Are you stupid?" Her jaw dropped as he explained to her how wrong she was and that he was in fact part of the strata committee, kind of like an HOA that oversees the building, and that she had no right to make rules for everyone. She gave us dirty looks before slamming the door. I thanked him and he said in the entire time he lived there, he had not seen someone so entitled. And the next one is part 2 of the entitled neighbor story. So this is an update to my last post. I had a lot of people ask me to post if she did anything else. This is also currently happening, and my SO is witnessing it and texting me as I'm at work. She has been quiet for the last few days, and I thought maybe that's it. Apparently I was wrong. So each unit in our building is allocated one parking space, just one. I park in mine and my SO parks his car on the street on the other side of the building. Our parking lot had one visitor. It is a very small parking lot, 6 spots for residents and 1 visitor. The visitor spot is nearly always empty, and my neighbors have said my SO could park his car there if he wanted, as we are the only unit with 2 cars, but he does not mind parking where he is. This morning my SO woke up to yelling. Our kitchen window overlooks the parking lot, and he snuck a peek out the window and saw entitled neighbor standing next to our nice neighbor's car, and they were arguing loudly. She kept yelling that she had a second car and needed to park in his spot, and he had to move his car or else she would have it towed. He kept repeating that it was his parking spot and she could either park it in the visitor spot or on the street, and if she towed his car he would report it stolen. My SO said she kept yelling that she can park where she wants and he needed to move it or else. So my SO decided to park his car in my empty spot in case she tried to park there while I'm at work. Last message she sent me was that she has stormed upstairs in a huff and slammed her door. Update: I got home from work and she has parked her second car in the visitor spot, but she has parked it so badly it is blocking the driveway in. Right now I am parked on the street, but I'm too tired to deal with her. Update 2, sorry I didn't update sooner, so like I said before, her car was basically blocking the driveway and I had to park on the street. Anyway, when I got up for work the next day it was still there, but when I came home it had gone. I asked my SO as he was at home, and apparently a tow truck came and took it away. I'm still not sure which neighbor called the tow truck, but I have a suspicion it is the one she was arguing with. SO said she has been quiet all day, only the odd footsteps. And the next one is the last update to the entitled Neighbor from Hell's story. Well, I am back. As many of you predicted, her entitlement grew. In case anyone missed the update on my last post, her car was towed, but I don't know which neighbor did it. This made her even more angry, but seeing as I was at work, she has not blamed me or my SO. It has been raining all week, and as I don't have a dryer, I have not been able to do any big items like sheets or towels, only clothes as I can hang them up inside. On Saturday it was finally sunny and I raced home from work. Dragged my SO out of bed so I could wash all the blankets and dry them in case it rained again. I managed to get through 5 loads of sheets, blankets and towels, and I hung them all out of the line outside. We all share it. There are technically 2 different lines for us to use and we have never had an issue before. I hung out my last load and went inside to chill. I went back out about an hour later to get the first load off and found every single item I had hung out on the ground. Nothing had replaced it, all of it had been torn down and my packs and pack basket gone. Most of what I had hung out was still wet and now covered in dirt. I got my SO and he helped me bring everything inside before I went upstairs and knocked on her door. When she answered, I asked if she had taken my washing off the line, and she smugly informed me that she had not given my permission to use her line and that next time I should be polite and ask and she might let me. Look, I'm going to level with you guys. I work in retail and deal with nightmare customers. I know how to be calm around these kinds of people, and I try to be polite about this whole thing with the letter and the car, but my bed is my safe space and I wanted it clean, and she effed with that just to be petty. I calmly told her that everyone can use the line, it is part of the building and nobody has to ask her permission. She tried to talk over me, but I just held my hand up and told her I was part of the strata committee, I know all the rules and who owns what, and she needs to pull her head out of her ass, grow up and stop her behavior, because it is not doing her any favors. I told her have a nice day before she slammed her door. And yeah, Ripe Stars, unfortunately there have been no further updates about this neighbor, but in case I see any in the future, I will of course keep you posted. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.